What you're about to see is the combined forces of the Warsaw Pact on exercise. It will be of particular interest to all those in BAOR, for it shows Soviet bloc equipment in a realistic and operational role. Naturally, as the film is of Soviet origin, the maneuvers are carried out successfully, with none of the setbacks one encounters in actual battle. Despite this, the exercise gives valuable insights into current Soviet tactics and equipment. You should be able to recognize most of the wide variety of current equipment shown, ranging from medium tanks to aircraft, from APCs to mine-laying helicopters. The sort of questions you should ask yourself are, do I recognize these equipments? How do they compare with our own? How can I use my equipment to the best possible advantage to defeat the enemy? The maxim, know your enemy, is a good one, for it's only by studying the opposition that we can learn about his strengths and weaknesses. This exercise by the Warsaw Pact countries, called Comrades in Arms, took place in 1970. Those taking part were Bulgaria, Hungary, East Germany, Poland, Romania, the Soviet Union, and Czechoslovakia. The total ground force involved was approximately 30,000 regular troops, making it one of the largest Warsaw Pact maneuvers since the war. Watching the exercise were top political and military personalities from the Soviet bloc, including Walter Ulbricht, at that time first secretary of the East German Communist Party. The theme of the exercise was based on a supposed attack from the west by NATO forces, which had penetrated almost to the Oder-Neisse line. Here it was contained and subsequently repulsed by a Warsaw Pact counteroffensive. There were four main phases to Comrades in Arms: the advance to contact, an assault river crossing, an amphibious landing, and finally an airborne landing. Phase 1 is the advance to contact, developing into an attack by ground and heliborne forces. Here you see the T-54 medium tank, which is 36 tons in weight and has a 100mm smoothbore gun. Later versions have gun stabilization in two planes and are fitted with full infrared. The T-54 is capable of snorkeling, as will be seen later, and it has excellent cross-country capability with a top road speed of 30 miles per hour. Its cruising range is approximately 250 miles when fitted with external fuel tanks. The more modern T-62 can be most easily distinguished from the T-54 by the bore evacuator in the middle of the barrel of the 115mm smoothbore gun. This gun has a better performance than the 100mm gun of the earlier T-54. Otherwise, the tanks look very similar. A heavy artillery barrage and attack by ground support aircraft precedes the final assault through the minefields onto the primary objective. Tanks fitted with mine plows are used to clear gaps through the minefields. The mine plow attachment does not greatly degrade the tank's performance. As the final attack is launched, the tanks and infantry are supported by artillery. Usually, the infantry are mounted in APCs, but here they've dismounted before closing onto the enemy positions. A simulated nuclear burst is released during the attack. Protective minefields are not only breached with mine plows, but also with a rocket-propelled mine hose, which clears a lane approximately 3 meters wide and 100 meters long. It detonates. Having cleared a path through the minefields, the tanks and APCs drive through and on to secure positions beyond. Mopping up operations then follow. Meanwhile, heliborne troops are landed behind the enemy's main defenses. By this means, the Soviets hope to create maximum confusion amongst the enemy, who are already under pressure, and to capture key points on the line of their main advance. The defensive positions are reduced one by one, and the infantry, supported by tanks and artillery, close in and capture the final objectives. This concluded the first phase of the exercise. The second phase is an assault river crossing. Ground forces are supported by aircraft of the Tactical Air Army, and heliborne troops are again used to secure key points well beyond the far bank. A heavy artillery barrage precedes the crossing. Equipment used in this operation includes the OT-64 APC, a 12.5-ton amphibious vehicle carrying 15 men and capable of 60 miles per hour on land or 6 miles per hour afloat. The PT-76 is an amphibious light reconnaissance tank with a crew of 3. Attack aircraft support the crossing. While the tanks across the river, the ZSU-23-4 gives protection against aircraft. Under cover of continued heavy artillery fire, the attack is pressed home. Heliborne troops are landed well behind the enemy to disrupt the defense. Following hard on the heels of the initial assault come the engineer troops with bridging equipment. In this case, the PP-64 Polish ribbon bridge is being built by Polish engineers. It looks rather similar to the Soviet PMP floating bridge. Until the bridge is ready, medium tanks snorkel across the river. The T-54, with its snorkel, can wade in water up to a depth of about 5 meters. To do this successfully, the exit and entry banks and the riverbed itself must be suitable, and not every river meets these requirements. When completed, the bridge comes into use, though this particular crossing is somewhat unrealistic. In war, bridges would normally be built by night. Having secured the far bank and established a bridgehead, this concluded the second part of the exercise. The third phase of Comrades in Arms was an amphibious landing on the northern coast of East Germany. It included the use of heliborne forces to breach beach defenses and the seizure of an airfield by airborne elements, so that heavy equipment could be flown in. The landing is preceded by heavy bombardment and by ground attacks from aircraft of the Tactical Air Army. Having reduced the effectiveness of the defending force by saturation bombardment, the way is clear for the assault. In this case, amongst the leading elements are engineers. Clad in frogman suits, it is their job to clear mines from the beaches before amphibious assault vehicles come ashore. At the same time, heliborne troops are also brought in to protect the engineers clearing the mines. Covering fire is provided both by the helicopters and from the naval force offshore. As soon as the minefields are cleared, the APCs come ashore, in this case BTR-60Ps. The BTR-60P is a 10-ton, 8-wheeled personnel carrier capable of carrying 16 men. Following the APCs come the tanks, including PT-76 light amphibious tanks and the medium T-54s. At the same time as the sea assault landing is going in, airborne troops are being used to secure an airfield inland. It would not be realistic to expect an airborne force to support itself for any length of time against opposition. It's therefore imperative that armored units landed from the sea are sent to link up with and to support the airborne force as soon as possible, even while the main battle continues on and around the beaches. As early as possible after landing, assault forces need port facilities, so a port or harbour will be one of their first objectives. Once the airfield is captured, transport aircraft bring in reinforcements and equipment, such as this BRDM light reconnaissance vehicle. Meanwhile, leading elements supported by heliborne troops close in to capture the port, with support from aircraft and artillery. To help the attack, reinforcements continue to arrive over the beaches. They include K-61 amphibious transports and light amphibious tanks. Once again, use is made of BTR-60Ps and PT-76 light amphibious tanks. The force builds up as medium tanks also come ashore. More T-54s. Artillery bombards the port until the infantry can get right into the port area and carry out house-to-house fighting. Support is kept up by tanks and artillery. Closer still, flamethrowers are used to reduce buildings. Eventually, infantry and tanks carry out the final assault on port installations. The battle continues into the night until the beachhead and port area are captured. The final phase is an airborne operation against an enemy already under heavy frontal attack by armored and infantry forces, which are advancing to link up with the airborne force as quickly as they can. Equipments used by the advancing force include T-54 tanks and artillery. The airborne force is carried in AN-12 Cub aircraft, about 60 of which are needed to lift a battalion group at one time. The parachutists are dropped and initial objectives taken. Amongst the light equipment dropped in is the ASU-57 air portable assault gun. As more parachutists are dropped, the airborne forces capture and secure their positions as rapidly as possible. Meanwhile, the armored force presses on, including medium tanks, the ZSU-23-4, and the FUG-70 armored reconnaissance vehicle. This final part of the exercise concludes with the armor breaking through to relieve the airborne force. Thus, in Soviet terms, there is a successful conclusion to the exercise. Afterwards, at a number of parades, medals were presented to those taking part, and in a major parade at Magdeburg, the equipments used in the exercise were driven past. What are the lessons to be learned from such maneuvers? Well, first of all, it's apparent that the Warsaw Pact armies are well trained. Secondly, in their tactics for conventional war, great reliance is placed on the use of airborne and heliborne forces behind our lines during an advance. Thirdly, they have an excellent range of military equipments. See if you can recognize them. In conclusion, if you have any questions about the Warsaw Pact armies, why not consult your battalion, brigade, or divisional intelligence staff officers? They have the answers. If you have any particular questions on equipment, why not find out if your battalion or unit holds the Army Technical Intelligence Review, which comes out quarterly and gives a wide range of articles on all aspects of the Soviet bloc equipment. Remember, it pays to know your enemy.